Hi, welcome to Merrimack Concerned Taxpayers TV. I'm your host today, Scott Adler, and today we want to talk about the upcoming deliberative sessions in some greater detail. The goal of Merrimack Concerned Taxpayers Group is to challenge the status quo and look for ways to be more efficient with the taxpayers' money, and it's a good way for taxpayers to learn more about their taxes. So today I have Lynn Christensen with us, the town moderator, and she's going to join us walking us through a deliberative session. So Lynn, thanks for being my inaugural guest on the show today.
Always a ball.
Absolutely. So I'm just curious, how long have you been the town moderator?
30 plus years.
Wow, 30 plus years.
I was first elected in 1990, and I served prior to that.
Have you seen a lot of change in how things are done, or has it stayed about the same?
There are some minor changes that have happened. There have been a couple of fairly substantial changes.
Okay.
Back in 96, we went to Senate Bill 2.
Okay.
Which was a big, yes, which was a big change.
Gotcha. Thinking back 30 years, that's a long time. What's been the most interesting deliberative session you can remember that you've been moderator of? Is there any one that comes to mind?
I think each one is different. I would say they're not as interesting now as they used to be, because the attendance is nowhere near what it used to be. I think Merrimack has the record for number of attendees at a deliberative session, and that was around 4,500.
Wow. Where was that held at?
It ended up being held in 3 different rooms. We started the session, and just too many people, so we had to adjourn. And what we did was we took the all-purpose room, we took the Smith gym, and we took the small Mastrocola gym.
Wow.
Set it up with AV equipment, large screens, so that you could sit in any one of the rooms and you could speak, and you could be heard in all the other rooms, and you could be seen in all the rooms.
Well, that's an undertaking.
Yep.
Did they have to reschedule it to make this happen, or just put
Yes.
it on pause for a minute and bring the equipment in?
Oh no, this was major equipment that had to be brought in. You know, your big screens and all the wiring for everything else, and we had some of the classrooms wired for just sound, so that if we expanded beyond that, they could just sit in the classroom and at least hear.
Was there a hot topic on the ballot that year that was causing that?
There was. It was school related.
Okay.
So everybody was just showing up.
Everybody was there to say what they wanted to,
Yep.
which is good. Yep. And that's really kind of the goal, is to get the taxpayers involved, to educate them in a way that they understand what's happening and they want to join in what's going on in the community. So what is a deliberative session? A lot of people I've talked to have never heard of such a thing. What is it?
It goes back to the original town meeting days, way back in colonial times, where the male property owners in the town would get together and talk about what they wanted to do in the coming year.
Okay.
They would establish items that they wanted to talk about. And so that's where the deliberative comes from, is they were going to sit in a room and deliberate on these issues. So it's evolved from there.
Interesting.
When we first did it, everything was done the same day. So you had the meeting.
Okay.
And you had your elections on the same day. Everything was all done at once. Eventually we went to the official ballot form of government, which meant the elections were now held after, and then we went to the SB2 form of government.
So the folks would basically vote, if you will, right at the deliberative session, and that was the end of it, and then transition to a two-part process then.
Correct. The official ballot deliberative session, everything is on the warrant, and you go in the room, you talk about it, you debate it, back and forth, and then there's a vote taken on the article, up, down, or delayed. So what is a warrant? a warrant is, again, we've got verbiage here. We are warning the public about the topics that are going to be discussed.
Okay.
So if it's not warned via the warrant on an article, we can't talk about it.
Well, that makes sense. Okay. I've often wondered where that warrant came from, and I've asked a few people.
It's a warning.
So I know we have the school deliberative session. Then we have the town deliberative session. So the school deliberative session is coming up a week from today, which by the time folks are watching this, it's going to be on March 3rd, I believe it is. Tuesday, March 3rd. It's going to be at the James Mastercola Upper Elementary School. And then we have a town deliberative session a week later.
On Wednesday the 11th.
On Wednesday the 11th at the same place. Are there any other deliberative sessions, or is that it?
Merrimack Village District.
Okay. They have one as well.
Is the third governmental body in town.
Okay.
And they're very different because they go back almost to the old version.
Oh.
So.
Okay. So do you moderate that as well?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I used to do all three.
Okay. So they have their own moderator now?
Each, and there are two different governments, actually three different governments. The town is their own separate government, not related to the school, not related to the MVD. So they all have their own clerks. They have their own council or selectmen or board members that run the place. They all have their own treasurer, their own moderator, and they're totally separate.
All under one, all in one town, but three separate things.
That's correct.
That's interesting.
Somewhat similar to a cooperative school district.
Okay.
That has more than one town as part of that SAU.
Okay. So each one has their own, but then they come together.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. What happens in a deliberative session?
Same thing happens both the town and the school.
Okay.
Regardless, same rules, same guidelines. What you do is you come in and you have a copy of the warrant with the articles that are going to be discussed, and we proceed through the warrant one article at a time, and we talk about it, we debate it, we get questions answered. We sometimes, on a big article, we will have a PowerPoint presentation or something such as that. There's frequently additional material available on a table as you're coming in describing certain things.
Okay.
They each have an annual report that is done that will have not only the warrant in there, but the budget. They will have prior meetings, all kinds of reports from various other committees. That's available.
Okay. And it'd be a good idea if the taxpayers kind of researched a little of this before getting to the deliberative session, right?
Oh, absolutely. That
way they know exactly what they're looking at when they get there for the discussion.
Yep.
So how do we know that it's all voters there, or those that are able to vote, they're registered? How do we control that?
When you walk in, there's a checklist just like you have when you go to vote.
Okay.
And you say, here's my name. They look you up, and as long as you're on the checklist, you're qualified to vote.
Okay.
The way we handle it in Merrimack is you're given a voter card that looks much like this.
Oh, okay.
That says you're a Merrimack voter. Some towns separate the voters from the non-voters.
Okay.
It's a public meeting. Non-voters are welcome to come in and watch.
Okay.
They don't usually speak, but they are welcome to come in and watch. If I have a situation where a husband and wife want to come in and the wife is not registered, maybe she's a green card, but the husband, I don't want to have to separate them.
Sure.
So this is a way of controlling it. If we have votes, The votes are all done by holding up that card, so that we're not counting hands, we're counting cards.
That makes life a little bit easier, and it makes it a little bit more friendly for the taxpayers, the public, to come in.
That's correct.
That's good. So you'll take each article and you'll read them one at a time.
Yep.
And after you've read the article, what happens?
The article is actually, a motion is made
Okay.
to place the article in front of everybody and seconded, and then whoever's made the motion speaks to it first. And they're given some time to explain what it is, why they're doing it, any tax ramifications, anything that comes out. And then the floor is open to anybody else, any other registered voter who would like to speak for or against it, or just make a comment. Those people are given a small amount of time. We don't want people dominating the conversation. We don't get into debates. All of the comments or questions are directed to me.
Okay.
I will farm them out to others appropriately,
As you see fit.
but they all come to me so that we don't end up with debates among people in the audience.
That could probably get things out of control pretty quickly.
It could. It could.
So it's a motion's made, it's seconded, and then there's discussion. Now, what if somebody wants to make a change to something?
They can make an amendment, or they can propose an amendment.
Okay.
That's given to me. I read it so that everybody knows what we are doing or proposing to do. And then we discuss that amendment.
Okay. If somebody wants to make this change to whatever warrant article it is, do they need to notify you in advance that they want to do that, or can they just walk up to the microphone and...
They can walk up to the microphone and do it. It's nice to let me know ahead of time, just so that I'm not caught unawares in case it's something that wouldn't be appropriate.
Okay.
Or I can sometimes give them guidance in wording
Okay.
or how to do it. So it's nice for me to have the advanced knowledge. But yes, they can walk up and say, I want to amend this to say. Then we discuss that amendment, and when we're through discussing the amendment, we will actually take a vote on whether we want to amend the warrant article,
Okay.
the motion, to read a different way than what's printed.
And that's where the public, the voters, vote with their cards
Correct.
that you showed.
Correct.
Okay. And then majority wins.
Correct.
Okay.
Once we're done with the amendments and there are no further amendments and there's no further discussion, there's no additional voting.
Okay.
That article is put onto the ballot as we ended up, however we ended up, whether it was amended or not. But there's no vote at that point.
Okay.
All the voting happens on Election Day.
So what...
And that's what's the difference between SB2 and official ballot.
Okay.
Because the official ballot, we would have voted that exact night
Okay.
on the article as to whether or not it was going to go forward.
So on official ballot, they would vote to make the changes, then they would vote for the article.
Correct.
Ah, okay. So we vote to make the changes at the deliberative session, then the ballot
Goes on to the ballot.
goes on to the ballot. Okay.
Yep.
What are some of the things that could or could not be changed on a warrant article?
There are a couple of things that are prescribed by law that cannot be changed. There's certain things that, for instance, the article to go to an SB2 form of government had verbiage that was prescribed by law.
Okay.
That couldn't be changed. Collective bargaining agreements cannot be changed.
Okay.
A couple of other minor ones, but not significant ones.
Okay.
You can't change the subject matter.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that they use the classic example of we want to raise and appropriate
Raise and appropriate.
X number of dollars to buy a fire truck.
Okay.
And somebody says we don't need another fire truck. I don't care what Facebook says lately, but
Sure.
they say we don't need another fire truck.
Right.
What we do need is another incident command vehicle for the police department. So I want to amend this to read, raise and appropriate X number of dollars for that. Not allowed.
Can't do that because way off of subject.
You didn't tell people, you didn't warn them that you were going to be talking about
That makes sense.
That.
Okay.
Okay? Now, if somebody comes in and says, I don't want to buy a fire truck, they're too expensive. My brother-in-law has a company that leases them.
Okay.
So I want to change this to lease a fire truck. Subject matter is the same, you could change it.
You can change that.
Yep.
Okay. So you mentioned the term raise and appropriate. Why, that's a little confusing for a lot of people. Okay. Why does it have that legal language like that? Why can't it say raise your taxes and spend it?
That's exactly what it says.
Okay.
We want to raise money via taxes and appropriate that money for this purpose.
Okay. Do you think go ahead.
And that comes into play with special warrant articles.
What is a special warrant article?
It's a warrant article, it's in there, the fire truck.
Okay.
Okay? It's not a general purpose one. It's not the general budget. It's not some of these others, but it's an article for a specific purpose.
Okay.
So in this instance, we want to raise and appropriate X number of dollars to buy a fire truck. Mm-hmm. Appropriate that money that you're raising for a fire truck, which means that's the only thing that amount of money can be spent on.
Okay.
On the general budget, the selectmen, the school board, the town councilors have the ability to move money between line items.
I see.
Okay? But if it's a special warrant article, special purpose, they'll raise the money, but they don't have to spend it. If they do spend it, they can only spend it for that purpose. So they couldn't decide after the fact that they don't need a fire truck after all, they're going to go buy the incident vehicle.
Okay. But could they decide not to buy a fire truck?
They could decide not to buy a fire truck, and that money will stay in the general fund and become part of the surplus at the end of the fiscal year, because they couldn't spend it for anything else.
Got it. But if it's on the general budget, they can move it around as necessary.
Yep.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think it's important for taxpayers to attend a deliberative session? Is that something that they should try to come out and be at?
If they care.
Okay.
Sometimes there's nothing on the agenda that you care about. I think it's important that they do. And that's an interesting point. When we had the official ballot form of government, a lot of people would show up because they knew decisions were going to be made. When SB2 became available, then people were very anxious to do that because they said, now I don't have to go to the deliberative session and listen to all this ranting about people that I don't care. I know what I want. I know how I'm going to vote. I just want to be able to take my time when it's convenient for me during the day and go in and mark the ballot the way I want it to mark. They also felt that at a deliberative session, special interest groups could, if you've got we had band uniforms as a warrant article once. Well, all the band parents are going to show up because they want to vote for the band uniforms.
Right.
Now, if they're enough in number, then they could override everybody else that's at the deliberative session. And so a lot of people said this will get rid of special interest groups. And actually it didn't.
Yeah, I could still see how it would, those that are gathering around a particular topic are still going to show up.
Yes, and because the attendance is so much lower, you don't need as many people in a special interest group to show up and affect not the end vote, but what actually goes on the ballot.
Makes sense. So how long ago did Merrimack go to the SB2?
96.
96, okay.
So we've done it for a while.
And is that the point in time when you saw the attendance at the deliberative sessions drop?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And I think every other town has seen the same thing. We actually had the first SB2 session in the state of New Hampshire.
Oh, really?
Merrimack is frequently the first on a lot of things.
Well, that's not necessarily such a bad thing. How would you suggest we get more of the public involved in what's going on in the town and the schools and the taxes and the deliberative sessions and voting? Do you have any ideas behind that?
It's hard, and it's just as hard getting them involved in anything. Years ago, you didn't have two-income families. You didn't have a lot of them. You didn't have a lot of single parents. People have become busier.
Right.
And busier, and so for them to find the time when they don't think it's that critical, it gets pushed off.
Especially if there's nothing of key importance to them.
Correct. The only thing you can do is, now we've got a lot more social media than we ever had before.
Right.
That doesn't guarantee that what you read on social media is correct.
Sure.
But at least people are talking about it and asking questions. The fact that, just like we're being recorded now and it's going to be played on TV,
right,
you can watch the public hearings for the budgets. Not a lot of people go there, but
right,
you could watch them. You can watch public hearings on anything that's coming up on the warrant articles and see if there's something there that you care about. And maybe you don't go to the deliberative session, but maybe you contact the school board or the town council and say, I really think you need to rethink this, or that's a great idea and I support it.
That's actually a really good idea. Just because they're not there doesn't mean they're not involved.
That's right.
They can be involved behind the scenes after the fact.
Yep.
That's
or before the fact.
Or before the fact, for that matter.
Yep.
That's very true. So,
I mean, the council and the school board are all very receptive, I believe, to input from the public.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are elected officials, so hopefully that would be the case.
Yep.
How long does a deliberative session usually last? That's probably a loaded question, but
no, I've seen them last as little as 20 minutes to half an hour to 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
Now, prior to SB2, you frequently went into the 10, 11 o'clock, and occasionally it would roll over to the next night.
Wow. So is there a time limit? You cut it off for the night and say, we're pausing?
I would.
Okay.
I would say we wouldn't bring up anything new after 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Because people you're tired at that point.
Right.
And you're not thinking, and let's just start back up again tomorrow night fresh.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Is there anything that you think that we haven't covered that the voters would be important to hear from you on?
I think just being aware of what's going on. If you've got questions, call the council, call the school board. If you're not sure what's going to happen or how something's going to happen, call me. If you'd like to do something,
okay,
you're not sure how, call me.
Okay.
I don't sit on either side of the fence. Regardless of whether I agree with you or don't agree with you, you'll never know that. But I'm happy to advise you as far as procedure, so that you can tell what you can do. You can make the most of it.
I think there's a lot of, you mentioned the dual income families and everybody's working and busy, and I think that's a lot of what happens when it comes time for the elections. People go to the polls and they may not necessarily know exactly what they're voting on. They may not have taken the opportunity to research each of the warrant articles and each of the candidates. Mm-hmm. And that can have a bit of a detriment to the outcomes if they don't know what they're voting on.
I get comments, not a lot of them, but occasionally people will come up to me at the election and say, do I have to vote on each of these? Mm-hmm. The answer is no. If you don't understand it, it's not something you have any knowledge about, then don't vote on it.
It's a good point. Shifting gears for a second, you may or may not be able to answer this, but if they don't understand something when they go to vote, is there somebody there that can explain it?
Town council is there, school board is there.
Okay. They go there. They can go right to somebody at their polling site.
Yep.
And ask, what does this mean?
Yep. That's
great. And often I've seen candidates outside the building because
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain distance they have
Correct.
to keep or something, right?
Yep.
So if they have questions to the candidates, that they can also
Yep.
go to their supporters there as well,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely.
That's good. Okay. So the school deliberative session is going to be on March 3rd. That's Tuesday at 7 p.m. James Mastercola Upper Elementary School. Is that going to be held in the all-purpose room?
Yes.
Okay. And then
Same thing for the town.
same thing for the town. So the town is going to be the following week on Wednesday, March 11th, 2020, at James Mastercola Elementary School. And then Merrimack Valley District, theirs is Merrimack Village District. Theirs already done.
No, it's coming up.
Coming up. Okay.
But it's a much smaller turnout.
So I would suggest that if you're interested in Merrimack Village District, that you look at the Merrimack Village District.
It's on their website.
And they can tell you exactly when and where to be. And then finally, we have elections coming up on April the 14th.
Absolutely.
Now, do you play any part of the elections, or that's just, what do you do?
That's me.
Okay, so you're handling all that as well.
I do the elections and I do the town meetings.
Wow. Okay.
It's my fun days.
Those are your fun days. So your work starts when? About
For the elections?
well, for the deliberative sessions and the elections.
It's kind of ongoing.
Ongoing.
Talking to a lot of people. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done. After the elections, numbers have to be run up to the Secretary of State's, reports have to be filed.
You have to do all that.
I help with it.
Got it.
Town clerk does a lot of it.
Good. Well, coming up in future episodes, we're going to be having, we're going to cover the warrant articles. We're also going to cover Merrimack Concerned Taxpayers Group position on the warrant articles, as well as additional topics. So I'd like to thank you, Lynn, for coming out today, being the inaugural guest. Lynn Christensen, town moderator. It's much appreciated. So thank you so much.
Like I said, it's fun.
Thanks.